Guys,
Trump 2024.
Guys, I would be biased in some way if I didn't watch both videos. They both came out one I did the other. I gotta watch both. Guys, guys, I will be crucified. I didn't pre-watch. I clicked it and it shows it as watched when I come back after I reopen it. Everybody knows this.
You guys are at the wrong rally. I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Who is Kamala Harris? What does she believe? And what does her story teach us about how she might govern if elected president?
She's the first woman ever to be the city's top prosecutor.
Kamala is Brad.
Kamala, you're fired!
Last week we did Trump. This week it's Kamala. So let me show you the rise of Kamala Harris.
Should be asking, are we smart on Trump? We did it, Joe.
I'm speaking.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
We will be prosecuted.
My mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you
47 years
in
the Wild West.
Show
We did it,
them
Joe,
who
xQc.
you are.
Harris was born in 1964 in Oakland, California. Her father had come to California from Jamaica to get his PhD in economics. Her mother immigrated to the US from southern India, landing in Berkeley, California for the same reason as her father: education. Her parents were married and had 2 kids, Kamala and her younger sister Maya. Growing up, Kamala and her family lived in a mostly black neighborhood in Berkeley. Eventually, her parents divorced in 1972, and Kamala and her sister were raised mostly by their single mother. And it sounds like many single-parent households, it was pretty tough. One thing we know for sure is that Kamala's mother was a major influence on her as a child.
My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. And it was mostly my mother who raised us. So my mother, that was my mother.
And her mother is the origin of this now viral quote.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
You exist in the context of all in which you live and was here for you.
Coconut tree.
Kamala's childhood was happening just at the time the civil rights...
Chat, guys, I like these guys' videos, but what was that? I don't get it. Wait.
...movement was at its height. This fight wasn't theoretical for her. It was happening in her literal front yard.
29 months
grew up
xQcl.
pretty much surrounded full-time by adults who spent their time marching and shouting about this thing called justice.
As an elementary school student, Kamala was a part of some of the first efforts to desegregate schools by busing kids from predominantly black neighborhoods to try to integrate these cities that had been so deeply divided by race.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Okay, so at this point, you start to see some of these influences that go on to inform the rest of her life. Her immigrant parents, especially her single mother who raised her, the civil rights movement happening around her, and the neighborhood that she grew up in. In middle school, Kamala's mom accepted a job in Montreal as a cancer researcher. She talks about this as being a big opportunity for her mom, but she was a teenager and she was not thrilled to be moving to Canada. Friends at the time describe high school Kamala as bookish, bubbly, and to have blended in with everyone.
Westmount.
After graduating high school in 1982, she enrolled in Howard University in Washington, D.C., where she studied political science and economics.
Yo, if you're in Westmount, you're rich as fuck, okay? Guys, I'm not capping it. Guys, I can afford houses in Westmount. That's how I'm saying this.
She took on student leadership positions, participated on the debate team, and continued to show an interest in activism, participating in protests on campus. While in DC, you also start to see her turn more towards politics. She spends both her summers and during the school year interning at government institutions, places like the Federal Trade Commission, or interning for a California senator. She worked at the National Archives. She was a tour guide at the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And in between all of this, she also took on summer jobs to make money, the most famous of which being her stint at McDonald's. When Which, like, during this election, people have been trying to debunk or, like, spread rumors that she didn't work at McDonald's, like it's some highly controversial thing. Anyway, the point here is there's a major paradox happening in Harris's life that we start to see. On one hand, she's influenced by activism. She's critical of government. She's protesting it, while also working within old government institutions that she was often critiquing.
What is that, Matt? What is that molding? What is that molding? What is that molding? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand. What happened to that being molded?
Major paradox happening. It's some highly controversial McDonald's. Which, like, during this election, people have been trying to debunk or, like, spread rumors that she didn't work at McDonald's, like it's some highly controversial thing. Anyway, the point here is there's a major paradox happening in Harris's life that
if it's that major and holding her back that much, why don't you just fucking, like, somehow prove it one way or the other? I think it's kind of easy, no?
To see. On one hand, she's
not a photo somewhere or like
some
old face
critical of government, she's protesting it, while also working within old government institutions that she was often critiquing as unfair. This is a major theme within her life, one you can see in this speech that she gave to Howard graduates in 2017.
You can march for Black lives on the street, and you can ensure law enforcement accountability by serving as a prosecutor or on a police commission. Somebody is going to make the decision. So why not let it be you?
Okay, so it's the mid-'80s, and Harris returns to California for law school. This is where we start to see more influences. Like one summer, she was an intern at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, and she gets her first real taste for how powerful a role as a public prosecutor can be.
I was working on a case, and I realized that among those arrested was an innocent bystander. But it was late on a Friday afternoon. The case would not get called until Monday. I pleaded for the judge to come back. I would not leave until the judge finally gave in. And when that happened, with the swipe of a pen, this woman got to go home to her children. That woman taught me that when you see something in front of you that's wrong, you can just go ahead and do what you know is right.
Okay, so we're now getting to the point that got me really curious about Harris. We have this list of initial influences that have informed her life, but now we get to the more visible part. What she did when she was in the public eye, during her career, her decisions, her words. They paint a picture, and I want to show it to you.
Most important things don't come easy, so it's not going to be a cakewalk. There's a lot of work to do.
Okay, but before we dive in, let's define this word prosecutor, which is a word that you're going to hear a lot when you talk about Kamala Harris. A public prosecutor is the government's lawyer. They are responsible for presenting the evidence and the case against people or businesses accused of committing a crime.
Yep.
And here in the United States, they're often seen as hawks. They're tough on crime, responsible for upholding America's habit of throwing millions in jail for nonviolent crimes. Okay? Public prosecutor. Big part of Kamala Harris's life. So after law school, Harris becomes a public prosecutor in California. First in Alameda County, and then for the city of San Francisco, and then eventually for the entire state of California.
It's her job, one, and two, they're being given most of the time winning cases, right? I mean, they don't take on like garbage, I'm pretty sure.
So now Kamala Harris, this activist turned kind of politician lawyer, takes on the role that is kind of the definition of tough on crime, working to convict criminals, advocating to lock them up, and upholding the status quo of our justice system.
Serious and violent crime, lock them up.
But Harris says that she's a different kind of public prosecutor. She calls herself a progressive prosecutor. Huh? This strikes people as kind of a contradiction.
Are you soft on crime or are you tough on crime? Instead, I believe we should be asking, are we smart on crime?
Again, here in the United States, progressives tend to advocate for reform to our justice system.
Fair enough.
They say that the system is too harsh, locking up way too many people who are disproportionately brown and black men, often for non-violent crimes, and for far too long. That's one of many critiques. And as I mentioned, prosecutors are kind of seen as the ones doing the locking up. So to get through this next section, let's put both of these words on a scale. And as we look at her career, let's assess what she's done that represents the progressive side of the scale, and what of her actions represent more of the traditional prosecutor side. I'm gonna go through the progressive side first, but then I will get to the prosecutor side. So don't forget that that's coming.
Early intervention leaves room in our prisons for the violent criminals who should be there.
First up, Harris says that being a progressive prosecutor means holding serious criminals to account while focusing on preventing crime in the first place. She focuses on stopping the crime before it happens.
How?
And to do this, throughout her career, she focuses a lot on data.
Let's look at the issue that we're presented with in California beyond one criminal case and look at the crime problem. Nationally, 75%, 54% to less than 10%, from 43% to over 90%, 70% reoffend.
The context here is that crime is one of those issues that easily scares us. No matter your political leanings, every person wants to feel safe. So there's a lot of emotions driving how our justice system works, how we treat criminals. But Harris wanted to change this. She wanted to use the analysis of numbers to help inform systems of justice and law enforcement that were more equitable, more rational, and to see in the data, why are these people committing crimes in the first place? She's building public databases.
They already know how bad Trump is.
That is a pretty bad take. Let's continue.
Let's focus on what we can do to prevent crime before it occurs.
Publishing statistics on crimes.
Elementary school students missing 60, 70, 80 days of a 180-day school year.
Arrest data.
I was told prosecutors don't need to focus on recidivism. I was told prosecutors should not focus on the needs of children.
A public database for police practices.
Did an analysis of who our homicide victims were. 94% of them were high school dropouts. Perhaps untraditional for me to ask the question, but I did. I got the answer.
Oh, and she took this like data-driven prevention effort pretty far, and it got kind of controversial when she came out and said that the state should be prosecuting parents with a crime if their kids miss too much school. And in a few cases, she actually did that.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned.
Okay, a few more things on the progressive side of the scale here, and then we'll get to the prosecutor side. She fought against applying the death penalty. She fought big banks and won convictions after the 2008 housing crisis.
We have delivered to California $18 billion in relief for California's homeowners.
She fought and won $1 billion for victims of a predatory for-profit university.
We are talking about Corinthian colleges taking advantage of Californians who simply aspire to achieve the American dream.
And perhaps her most nationally recognized moment as Attorney General is the moment where she told the clerk of Los Angeles to begin issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples, back during when this was a big debate around Proposition 8, or the legality of gay marriage.
This is Kamala Harris. You must start marriages immediately.
Okay, but hold your horses. There's another side to this story. So far, I've made Harris look like this reform-minded, progressive champion as a prosecutor. But let's look at the other side of the scale.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Lock them up.
Aggressively prosecuting violent criminals as San Francisco's first African-American DA.
First, the death penalty. In 2014, as Attorney General, in a seemingly reversal of her previous actions as district attorney, she actually fought to keep the death penalty in California by appealing a ruling that would have effectively ended it in the state. In another case, the Supreme Court came out and said that California's prisons were so overcrowded that it violated the Constitution as cruel and unusual punishment. And yet, her office supported the governor's fight against releasing prisoners. Over the years, she resisted or fought against some criminal justice reforms. Her office prosecuted almost 2,000 people in cannabis-related offenses, as well as defending the cash bail, which critics see as unfairly punishing lower income.
I find this to be an odd style. Hold on.
Her office prosecuted almost 2,000 people in cannabis-related.
Guys, I gotta keep it a buck. If something is a law at a certain time, right? Should you just not prosecute these crimes? I mean, it doesn't matter what your take personally is, or the prosecutor's take is. If something is breaking the law and you're being given a case that somebody broke the law, you prosecute the case. So you can say, nah, it's weird. Let's not do that. I mean, they have to go forward.
Related offenses, as well as defending the cash bail, which critics see as unfairly punishing lower income defendants. Okay, I know this is a lot of like
Guys, if you're gonna talk about the rate of people who commit crimes after prison, whatever, you gotta label crime as crime. If somebody does a crime, well, they have to know it's a crime, and so they stop doing crimes. Otherwise, you're teaching them doing a crime is okay. You get away with it.
weeds of the justice system.
It's not about what the crime is, it's whether it's a crime or not. If that's a crime, they know it's a crime. Guys, it's behavior science or whatever. Somebody knows they're doing a crime, and they say, guys, this state is a crime, and they commit that crime, they are a criminal. Like, if you keep telling somebody, if you do a crime, you get away with it, well, they'll continue to do crime.
And like with the Trump video, I was able to be like in the weeds on
You're
like
teaching them
branded
that.
vodka and giant towers in New York City. But Kamala's story is actually this. It's like she has been in the weeds on criminal justice policy, and her critics and her fans debate as to how progressive or hawkish she was in the system. And so that is how we are evaluating her here. I know it's not as fun as watching Donald Trump like be in The Apprentice, but this is her career.
She's California's most innovative district attorney.
After going through all of these critiques, you can see why some liberals call BS on her whole idea of being a progressive prosecutor, saying that her career was actually built off of maintaining a tough-on-crime policy while sprinkling in some progressive reforms. No matter how you judge all of this...
Well, that's what... Well, hold on. Well, that's what progression is. Is this stupid or am I stupid? That's what progression is it progresses towards something new. It's going from one thing to the other. It doesn't plateau instantly. It's the fact that you get there. So sprinkling is actually the way to be progressive.
Crime policy while sprinkling in some progressive reforms. No matter how you judge all of this, what's clear is that Harris continues to mind that balance that she has her whole life, where she's clearly has earnest progressive values and ideals, but she also is pragmatic and works within the system that she believes is where she can make change, which means upholding the status quo. But what this looks like, especially now that she's under the microscope of the entire world, no one really knows where she stands, because there's seemingly contradictory or inconsistent behavior here. I'll share my read on that in just a sec, but first, let's see what happens next.
I am excited to stand before you as a proud California candidate for the United States Senate.
The election has been exhausting because of the news cycle. I feel like every day there's like 150 news stories that I should be following, but they're coming from all these different news outlets that all have different biases. Luckily, there is a solution for that, and that is the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News aggregates the factuality, affects the coverage. Right now, each candidate, now Ground News is giving find out. So to get this massive discount, crazy news, specifically the progressive communities, shook by the election of Donald Trump.
Do we retreat or do we fight? I say we fight. I intend to fight.
Now, Harris is a prosecutor, a professional legal fighter. And over the next few years, she used her experience to grill Trump cabinet officials and nominees as they came before the Senate.
Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body? Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir? Perhaps they've suggested.
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted.
And then, 2 years later,
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
During this campaign, like everyone in a Democratic campaign, she swung far to the left, saying that she espoused pretty like left-leaning policies.
Guys, is there still a draft? People say the draft. Guys, is there still a draft to this day? Is the draft still a thing? Is this still a thing? I have people say yes, I have people say no. I can't fucking read the chat.
And that has come back to bite her basically every week during this election. But she didn't gain traction, and she soon pulled out of the race.
I'm suspending our campaign today.
But soon, she got a call from the Democratic nominee to join the ticket.
You ready to go to work?
Oh my God, I'm so ready to go to work.
And as the vice president...
Okay, let's say tomorrow there's a world war, okay? It's a world war against the aliens. Aliens are spawning in every zone. Every zone has aliens tomorrow. Okay, it might actually happen. Tomorrow, aliens in every zone. And every city has to fight against the aliens. And would there be a draft? Would there be a draft? Yes or no? Don't fucking troll me today, chat. I'm gonna lose my shit. I'm gonna lose my shit, chat. I'm gonna lose my shit. Do not. I'm thinking about 9% yeses in chat. About 90. Okay. 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 All right. Selective surface system. Hold on. Bing, ba, bang, ba, bang. Okay. Okay. Is there a today? Okay, okay. System, blah, 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 blah. Classified as consensus, okay. All male U.S. citizens and immigrants, non-citizens who are between the ages of 18 and 25 are required by law to be registered within 30 days after their 18th birthday. They must notify the selective service within 10 days of any changes in information provided. Where's your cards? Chad, is that the thing? Okay. So he says it in chat. It is not the draft.
For the draft. Here at Selective Service Headquarters in Washington is CBS News correspondent Roger Mudd.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And then there's like the calendar, and then they choose the months and shit.
002.
Okay. Therefore, I will give you that point. I will relinquish that point. That the argument to say that there's nothing that dictates male bodies, incorrect. That would be incorrect. If this is true, if this is all true and I haven't been gaslit, it is an incorrect argument. There's a lot of good arguments, but that's not that one goes flat.
Presidential nominee, during the debates especially, her experience as a prosecutor continued to define her reputation.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Biden and Harris won the White House in 2020.
We did it. We did it, Joe. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
Okay, now listen, I'm going to be honest here. When I started reporting this story, I kind of thought that this next part was going to be the juiciest part. Like, what does she do when she's vice president? And it ended up being the least helpful in understanding Kamala Harris. I've wrestled with this and concluded that I can't exactly learn a ton about Harris from her 4 years as vice president. Partly because it was Joe Biden's administration and the vice president doesn't really call the shots. And partly because of the task that she was given, which was the duty of fixing the root causes of migration from Central America to the US's southern border. Like, good luck. The mandate was, go use American power to fix poverty, systemic corruption, and gang violence in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras so that people stop trying to come to the United States. I've reported a lot on migration and borders, and specifically in Central America, and I can tell you...
I don't know how that's funny. Well, you start with an ideal. You're giving a massive task, and you chunk it like with a pickaxe, and you do the best you can, right? This is pretty much what it's at. I don't think it's funny. Well, I'm not even biased. I don't think it's a funny topic to be given a big task because it's not meant to it's not something you finish.
That one vice president has no chance of making a dent in these issues, especially in just a couple of years.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
Now, you can read her 5-pillar plan, but when I read it, it just feels kind of bland and familiar. Like the many reports with aspirational language about how the U.S.
How do you fix another country? Okay, in this instance, if let's say in a perfect world you were to not buy any of their drugs and the drugs aren't going through, right? There's less of an incentive for them to produce and partake into the drug trafficking into the country. And it changes the fabric of crime in that zone. It does, though, by nature. What? Is that incorrect? Does that not changes the
Huh? somehow fix systemic problems in other countries. Stuff like this does not work, or if it does not work quickly. And to add to all of this, the American people seem to misunderstand what her task actually was. And this includes me, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I, like a lot of people, thought that Kamala Harris was in charge of like the border, like this border situation. Like she was supposed to fix what we do with people coming to the border. And all I'm seeing on TV is record numbers of migrants arriving to the border. Okay. Huge numbers of unaccompanied young people. And not just from Central America, but from tons of countries. Yep. Who was to blame for this big crisis on the border? Many looked at the vice president, because wasn't she the border czar in charge of all of this? No, she wasn't, but we all thought she was. And it didn't help that in one of her first media appearances, she kind of waffled some pretty basic questions about this.
This whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Now, to be fair and generous here, I should say that when you look at the most recent data, migration to the US border has gone down quite a bit, especially
encounters at the US southern border from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras.
If you look at people coming from the 3 countries that Kamala Harris was tasked with fixing, and if I were Kamala Harris, I would be touting this, shouting it from the rooftops as a huge success of her big role. And while I think her initiatives of like meeting with the leaders and trying to get more business to Central America to like make jobs and fix these root problems were earnest and well-intentioned, I just truly don't think that it's reasonable for us to evaluate her based on any of these metrics. A vice president has no chance of fixing these deeply rooted systemic issues in other countries in just a few years. Okay, I've made that point. Let's move on.
Look, I'm not a young guy. With the COVID, excuse me.
Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Then I think don't bring up the point at all then and just move on. Why bring up this point if you're gonna only for the sole purpose of saying this can't be done, just forget about it? Well, I don't think it's just then just don't present the point then. I think it's a useless thing to present then. Because guys, I feel like tough issues, there's always an excuse for why it's not being done. I think it's stupid. I think the president can't do it because of the old president. The vice president can't do it because of the vice president. The people can't do it because they're just people. The people at the border can't do it because they're going to sort of go to the government. It's like a whole like nobody can do it. Nobody can do it. Nobody can do it. At one point, it's like, who's doing anything?
Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong.
Bad debate nights happen. Trust me, I know.
President Biden has decided to step out of the race for the White House.
He is offering his full support and endorsement for Kamala Harris.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
So, here we are, kind of in modern day. We all know what happens next. Vice President Kamala Harris gets thrust into becoming the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party, as Joe Biden comes to grips with the fact that his age and declining mental acuity was a guarantee that he would lose and Donald Trump would be our next president.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
So Harris is now in the spotlight, and voters are wondering how she will be as a president. What does her past, both personal and professional, tell us about how she'll govern? And the answer to that is pretty unclear. Partly because over the course of her career, Harris has shifted and morphed her views based on the system and the situation that she's in. That's what we've seen as we've talked about it here briefly. She doesn't have a
well, yeah, she's a progressive. She plays the meta. The meta changes, you change it. Guys, the game changes, you change your hand, you change your play. It is what it is.
That shows some absolute ideological consistency.
Guys, which if you don't at least play to the system, you get fucking nowhere. Nothing gets done. It is what it is. Guys, nobody is completely rigid in the eyes of the people that are rigid and whatever, or people that maybe behind the scenes, sure, but when you're somebody who's public and you play the game, you cannot be rigid. You are part of the system.
Which has been perhaps her #1 critique, that Kamala's record simply is not consistent. And yet, her character seems to be consistent. Her lived experience is as well. So after doing this research on her life, I do believe her when she says...
Okay, before some people say, yo, she's fake, blah, blah, blah. Guys, let me think at this word, okay? Let's say this is a system, okay, where this red is rules that are of the right and blue are of the blue. Okay, bing, 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 bing. Okay, listen. Now this is year 1, okay. This is year, let's say 10. Okay, it's you can't swap everything instantly. progression is like, yeah, you'll be like this, and then one will slip in, and it'll be red like that, right? And then the next year it'll be like this, maybe like that, right? And it slowly, if your goal is progression, is that at the end it'd be like this. So of course there's gonna be instances of, dude, weren't you like for this, and now you're for that? Well, yeah, sure, right? And it makes sense, but you have to progress there. You need to progress towards there. It's not, progression isn't spawning into the new world, okay? By being rigid, you have no allies, you have nowhere. Like, this is, guys, this is politics. You have nobody. Nobody that supports you, nobody that wants anything. You don't get shit done, you're gonna be left out. You're not gonna go anywhere. This is politics.
Is my values have not changed.
And this election is weird. They're getting weirder every time, but this one's super weird. She's running against a showman, a professional marketer, businessman caricature who campaigns on his non-political achievements, his personality, not his policy proposals. Kamala Harris was born to immigrant parents who came to the United States looking for education and opportunity. And through hard work and endurance, she pushed her way up through the ranks to where she is today, all without serious scandals or dings to her character. The only thing we could dig up on her is that she dated the mayor of San Francisco, and that may or may not have helped her like get a job or a position on some like insurance board, but this was like a consensual relationship. There was no cheating, like it's not very juicy. So we're
Well, I don't understand.
This was like a consent.
What? I don't understand. Go back. What?
She pushed her way up through the ranks to where she is today, all without serious scandals or dings to her character. The only thing we could dig up on her is that she dated the mayor of San Francisco, and that may or may not have helped her like get a job or a position on some like insurance board, but this was like a consensual relationship. There was no cheating, like it's not very juicy. So regardless of what you think of her politics, her stance on crime, I do think it is still legitimate to consider this personal character, especially when we're thinking about the most powerful person in our country, the leader of the country. Because leaders lead with their personal experience as a guide. And this woman has lived a life that allows her to relate to a lot of everyday Americans, something that seems to be in short supply among leaders these days. So I don't know how Kamala Harris will govern if she becomes president. But from looking at her record, I do feel fairly convinced that she has a sense of...
Okay. Unfortunately, guys, I like this guy's videos a lot, okay? I will give you an unbiased, take on this, okay? If you were to compare the Trump video and this video, I have to take note of the fact that it's a lot of times him speaking, him talking, and less of the media speaking, the reports, what's out there. It's a lot of opinions and takes and analysis by him, and not by just other stuff, right? This is the difference I noticed.
Ethics and morals and values. And I think that is important to consider. So if you are of voting age and you're an American, let me tell you one thing for certain. You are likely to not vote. In this country, only half of the people between 18 and 29 who are eligible to vote.
Because it's interpreting the data a lot for the viewer, and I don't think I don't think it's the leeway that was given in the other person in the other video. Is this a fair analysis of me? It's basically sending some data and guiding it to the right places, but it wasn't really done in the other video. The other video was a little bit more cut and dry. It's okay. I'm just pointing it out.
Actually turn up. So our democracy is totally distorted because not everyone's voice is counted. I'll put a link here.
Research has been done, though.
Register and find your place to vote. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.
The fuck?
Is totally distorted because not everyone's voice is counted. I'll put a link here.
Huh? Youth voter turnout in presidential elections in the United States. Yo, I gotta keep it a buck. It's funny that people on the left are saying this because can I be honest with you? I feel like people always say that the youth is like red pill and radicalized in like pretty massive amounts, and there's a big upshift in a red sentiment with the youth, and they're like, oh, guys, go vote. I mean, dude, I have to be honest with you. Well, I'm just saying. If you want the youth to vote, I mean, it's going to be a lot of red votes. I'm just saying.
Everyone's voice is counted. I'll put a link here where you can go register and find your place to vote. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, folks. For those
guys, I've seen some of the data and some of the things. Guys, young men are absolutely shifting red by a massive, one of the biggest shifts we've seen in decades.
Still here. I just, finished recording this video, and I just recorded the Trump one yesterday, and I'm struck with how different they are. That could be a reflection of my personal bias. Like, obviously, I came down somewhere on each of these,
but
it's also a reflection of the different lives that they've lived. Donald Trump's life.
Guys, it was a massive politics data sheet or whatever. Guys, show it. It had a bunch of things, a bunch. And men, women this, men, women that, blah, 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 ba-ding, ba-dang. Okay. I'll show it then. Somebody link it. Somebody link it. Somebody link it before I snap. Is this the one? I don't remember. It was something. It was something. I don't know. It's somewhere in there. Guys, find the things that I had seen. I mean, I think those are pretty accurate too. I mean,